Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Gunthrek Chats video. I just finished watching Crimson Tide for probably the millionth time, the end of the movie kind of sparked a thought in my brain about evil and how unintuitive it seems, yet how natural it is. And I know that at first, when you first hear that, you're like, what? Especially if you've seen the movie and you know how it ends and all of that. I'll get to that point in a little bit. First, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, I want to go through a quick little summary of what happens in the movie so that you can understand the context of what happened and why I think what I think. So basically, the idea is the movie starts out with Russia in the 90s. This is after the fall of the Soviet Union. There's a bunch of fighting happening in Chechnya and the surrounding areas, and the Russian government decides that they're going to put their foot down on it, and America gets upset and starts causing a bunch of problems, withdrawing aid, causing NATO to do a bunch of stuff, and the Russians get really mad, and some rebel factions within the Russian Federation decide that they're going to try to take over the government. They take over a couple of bases that have nuclear submarines, and they get access to a bunch of nuclear weapons. And it becomes this really high stakes, really big problem. So America sends a bunch of their nuclear submarines, but the story is about the USS Alabama, which is helmed by the captain played by Gene Hackman and the executive officer played by Denzel Washington. There's a bunch of drama between the two characters before everything really comes to a head, but eventually we get to the point where the command structure sends a message to launch nuclear weapons at Russia, because apparently the Russians are getting ready to launch their missiles, so we need to do a preemptive strike. They get ready to start doing their stuff, but then they're attacked by another submarine, and their communication systems are damaged. But right before the systems are damaged, the command structure sends them a new message that gets cut off, and the XO wants to find out what's happening, but the captain's like, we don't have time for this crap, we need to hurry up and launch our missiles. And there's a big fight, and the XO relieves the captain of command, and there's a bunch of fighting, and there's a bunch of back and forth. Eventually, it becomes this huge, almost violent drama, because, there's one side getting weapons, the other side getting weapons. There's back and forth taking over of the command of the ship, and it just gets really, dramatic and crazy, because the XO's best friend ends up turning on him, and then finally does what his friend thinks is the right thing, and it's a whole thing. Finally, at the end of the movie, the communications are restored at the absolute last second, just like any great thriller movie would. And it turns out that the Russians ended up not firing their nukes. The rebels ended up not having the heart to fire on their own countrymen. And basically, fewer than 100 people ended up dying in the entire conflict, and the Russian government takes control of everything, and everything's fine. The captain of the ship ends up accepting early retirement because, clearly he didn't make very good decisions, and the XO ends up being vindicated because, he was trying to make sure that they were following orders the way that it was supposed to be followed. Now, the thing that caused me to kind of have this thought about evil when it comes to the end of this movie is that at the very end, when it's finally revealed that the Russians ended up not firing and that the order is to terminate the launch of all the missiles from the submarine, there's a massive cheer all across the ship, and everybody's losing their minds, and they're like, oh my God, we're so happy, and we're so relieved, and we're so this and that. Yeah. And, that is the natural reaction that I think most of us would have to something like that, where, the idea that millions or billions of people are now not going to die because, people ended up doing the right thing and choosing and making good decisions, and, the violence and all of the things that we fear ended up going away. It's natural for us to feel relief, to feel happy, to feel like it's the proper outcome, that, hey, this is, man, we're all so happy. And this is the part where I want to kind of emphasize the idea that evil in it of itself is very counterintuitive-ish. And I say ish very intentionally, because in modern society, in just about every country, we have introduced the idea that human life is valuable, and that people are important, and that our relationships with each other are important. And because we have that as the basis of our viewpoint of the world, most of us tend to have the idea that it's very bad to hurt people, that it's very bad to kill people, that it's very bad to oppress people, that it's very bad to do these things that we wouldn't want done to us, so why would you do them to somebody else? I think the vast majority of the people in the world do believe that that's something that's bad. However, you put people in certain situations, and all of a sudden the things that we typically tend to believe in usually melt away under the strain of really bad things happening. All it takes is to be placed into a situation where it's your life or someone else's life, and you're put into a situation where you're really going to learn what kind of a person you are. Do you really hold to these values that you claim to, or do you throw the other person under the bus and let them have the bad consequence that happens to them? Now, obviously, high stress situations and things like that aren't necessarily the measure of everything, right? Like, it's one thing to be put into a situation where horrible things are going to happen, and then, maybe you don't make the best decision. But what I really want to drill down into, outside of just the fact that there is a little bit of evil in all of us, no matter whether you believe in it or not, we are all capable of doing horrible things. But the reality is that history has shown us that there are many people in the world who actually want the bad things to happen. They want these terrible things to happen for various reasons. There are many, many different reasons why certain kinds of people really want terrible things to happen. They want people to suffer. They want people to die. They want people to be subservient. And here are a few examples. All you have to do is look at modern times, and you're going to see many examples of it. All you have to do is look at greedy businessmen and the greedy corporations who run certain kinds of enterprises where they don't really care about what happens to people. Especially, big pharma. What are they doing? Do they really care about whether people are happy or healthy or, getting better? No, they are perfectly willing to go out of their way to push different kinds of drugs that they know have harmful side effects, that they know are going to have long-term negative effects, or they're perfectly willing to withhold life-saving medication from people who really need it, because if I'm not getting paid, then you're going to die. And that's their mantra. They don't care whether you live or die. They have no empathy or sympathy or anything like that. They are the kind of people who put their own money and power and influence over the lives of real people because you don't matter to them. That's evil. Power-hungry dictators who have decided that they want to take control of their country. We've seen many of those in the last, couple hundred years, if not the entire course of human history. How many times has somebody risen to power, yanked control away from the people, and committed horrible atrocities? All you have to do is look at World War II and Soviet Russia and all the various different small dictatorships like South Korea and Venezuela back when it was, I guess it's still kind of doing so. I haven't really read up on Venezuela, but I know things are pretty terrible there because of people who have come into power all over the world. It happens all over the world where single people come into who have decided to take power, and they figure out a way to make it happen. And then they get into power and they're perfectly fine and content just killing as many people as they feel like they need to secure their power or to prevent somebody else from building another base of power. Insane ideologues who convince other people to do terrible things in the name of whatever it is that they believe in. Cult leaders, political figures. I know you're going to assume I'm talking about Trump. I'm not. I'm just talking about political leaders in general. It's like the one with the communists and all that stuff. McCarthy. He caused a bunch of people to have horrible things thrown their way because, he went on a witch hunt for communists. Now, I don't necessarily think that communism is a good idea, and I would never advocate it, and anybody trying to impose that system upon me is going to be in for a fight. But, there's a difference between saying something is wrong and defending against it and persecuting people because they think it's a good idea. That's bad. That's evil. We have seen many examples of this kind of thing happening in our lives, but we don't want to believe in the idea that people are inherently evil. Because we see so many people out in the world who just live their normal lives, do their normal things, exist in common with each other, and, have friends and family, and we build communities, and we want to think that evil isn't something that we have to worry about. But the reality is that there are so many people out there who want terrible things to happen to you. To you. They want bad things to happen to you. Not necessarily because they don't like you specifically, but because it benefits them in some way. And there are a lot of people out there who are just fine with that happening. There are a lot of people who would see the cheers of happiness and be disappointed with that result because they want the nuclear war to happen. They like the rebels in Russia, the Rodchenko guy who took over. I guarantee he wasn't cheering over the results of what happened there. He wanted to seize power. He wanted to take control. He wanted to do whatever terrible things needed to happen to make sure that he got what he wanted and fuck everybody else. That's evil. And we all have that inside of us to some degree, but some people are perfectly fine with that part of themselves, and they're perfectly fine putting that out into the world and doing what they need to do to get satisfaction for whatever it is that they need, whatever it is that they decided that they want. And I don't know why that thought popped into my head. As soon as I saw all the cheering, for this time watching through the movie, for whatever reason, I was like, well, I bet the Russians aren't very happy about that. Or at least the rebel group of the Russians aren't very happy about that. Because it just seems so natural. It seems so natural to see cheering when, oh man, this whole crisis thing was averted. And then I remembered the Sum of All Fears, where you have this small group of, it's a fictional tale, but you have this small radical group of people who blow up a nuclear bomb in Baltimore, Maryland. And they're trying to start a war between the United States and Russia. And when that ends up getting dissolved, I guarantee most of those people end up getting killed because, America's not just going to stand by and let that kind of crap happen. But guaranteed, the small group of people who were participating in all of that were sorely disappointed that things went the way that they went. And everyone else was extremely happy. So the point of this video is not that, to say that Crimson Tide is a story about evil and that kind of stuff. It's mostly that the movie itself and the ending of the movie kind of sparked that thought in my head of, you never really think about how evil is something that is always present in the world because we don't deal with it on a daily basis. And most of us don't know how to respond to it when it comes up. But we always need to have it in the back of our head that there's always going to be somebody out there who wants that terrible thing that we all are relieved didn't happen. They want that to happen. And we need to be ready to push back against those people, because if we don't, they will figure out a way to manipulate all of this situation to get the result that we don't want to happen. It happens all the time. Sometimes it's really, really bad. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And that's all I wanted to say for the day. Sometimes you just need to kind of have a little reminder of of what the reality is in the world around you. But click that like button, help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can get this channel monetized. And hit the like button and be sure to come back for our next video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you then.